are live. Are we live? All right. Well, good morning, everyone. My name is Phil Whit, I work at George Mason Career Services, and we're in attendance of creating Black spaces to help professional and personal growth. I probably messed up that title. As you, for some of you that don't know, we are actually currently live streaming this. So it's kind of your consent, understanding that if you have a question, either you're not comfortable being on a mic and having that broadcast later, you tell one of us, and I can answer that question, or stand up and introduce yourself to the live audience. So for the past 2 years, Eastern EACE has hosted a web show called EACE Conversations. Eastern EACE Conversations with Phil and Bob and Phil and Whit. I don't like that. That's showing me. But and it's been a great production, doing this. It's still live right now. If you go to the Eastern EACE Facebook page or actually YouTube channel, as well as Spotify, you'll see these conversations still visible. And it's been a great project. I like podcasting. I like doing those things. But, life be lifing. And I think it's time for me to actually graciously step down from that project and pass it over to two very capable and loving people, and I'm very excited to announce that moving forward, it's going to be Eastern EACE Conversations with Whit and Mo, or Mo and Whit, or Mo Whit. Mo Whit. But they're going to be taking over, and it's going to be a great venture and conversations on a monthly basis. I'm just really excited to see where they take this web show and the guests they have and all that. So I'm really excited. And so I think this is a great time to actually present our moderator for this discussion, Whitney Kerr.
Thank you, Phil. I'm gonna ask you to please take my phone so that I can continue this live session if possible. But good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Oh, thank you for the energy. Yes, definitely love that. Welcome to the conversation. I am truly, it's on selfie mode, I'm sorry. I am truly excited to see you all today and to be joined here by our lovely guests. I will say I'm not moderating this. I'll keep it a stack. I am not moderating this. Why? Because Phil and I, when we do our show, we love to just have a conversation with our guests, right? And we may, ask questions and expect an answer, but then we go off script and we just talk, right? We had, several people on the show that are here today, and we appreciate you all that joined us as guests previously. And we hope that as Phil steps off and Mo takes the mic, that you all continue to join us in the conversation. And some things may change, some things may be a little different, but it is what it is. That's what happens when you progress in life, But yeah, so I am going to pass the mic over to my new lovely co-host, all right, so that she can introduce herself, and yeah, and then we could just get started. Cool.
Sounds good. I can talk into this mic.
I forgot. Wait. One more thing. My name is Whitney Carr, everybody. My pronouns are they, she, and I am the Associate Director for Campus Engagement within the Office of Career Resources and Exploration at Rutgers Newark. And woo, yeah, Rutgers, woo. Are you? Okay, yeah. So yeah, that's my little brief intro, but yeah.
All right. I'm Monique Sample. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I am with Virginia Commonwealth University. I am the Student Programs and Employer Partnership Specialist. That is a very long title to say I work with students on identity and career, but I also work with employers and creating safe spaces for our students who are coming into their places of employment, understanding what that looks like, making sure that they have systems in place and processes in place that are going to be welcoming, affirming, and set them up for success, and not allowing the same pitfalls that we may have experienced going into the workforce and going through the workforce that we weren't aware of, and microaggressions, how to navigate that, how to navigate filling out some of the forms as a neurodivergent person, what it looks like to have a disability and disclose that, what it looks like going in as an LGBTQIA individual and what disclosure looks like for you, and any other identities that you might carry. But as an employer, how do you set your institution, how you set up your organization up to be successful for our students? What does that learning curve look like for you? And then for our students, what does the learning curve look like for them? So that is what I do. Yeah, and that's a little bit about me.
Thank you, Boo. Thank you. She did such a great job at doing that. I just said, hey, yeah, I work at Rutgers.
Yeah.
But all right, so I'm gonna pass the mic over to Brianna, so you can introduce, don't do that. So you can introduce yourself. So, just basic introduction. Is that okay?
Yeah,
Okay,
sure.
all right, cool.
Good morning, everybody. It's a joke, but it's actually real fast. I'm not a morning person, so I'm still waking up right now, honestly. But my name is Brianna Walker, pronoun she, her. I serve as the Assistant Director of Career Education at Virginia Commonwealth University in Richmond. What else am I saying?
It's okay.
Okay. I don't know. In my role, okay. I guess if I can go off of Monique. In my role, I'm mainly focused on the coaching side for the students. So helping them with all of the things as it relates to job search, interview prep, resume writing, all of that. Also focused with working with instructors on doing classroom presentations to bring career prep to the students, recognizing since we are a minority serving institution, rather than staying in, as I mentioned yesterday, Capital Confederacy, so recognizing that our population is 1/3 first gen, 1/3 Pell Grant recipients, so they may not know to even come to our office or what our office even is. So I've been working on this initiative to bring career services to the classroom, so that way it's the same kind of information, but what we've been seeing is the traction of them leading to now coming to career services since we've coming into the classroom and introduced the idea. I also serve as an instructor for a career professional development course in the institution. So, and I'm a Steelers fan. I just wanted to make that very clear since we keep hearing all this Go Birds stuff. So, just wanted to make that very clear. It's only one city in Pennsylvania that really matters to me.
Everybody will hate me. That's the Spurs fan because I'm a Cowboys fan. So yeah, here you go.
Right. All right. Good morning, everybody. My name is Stanley Willard Jr. He, him pronouns. I'm the pre-business career advisor at Connecticut College. I'm focused on advising based on the title, as you all might think. But one thing I do want to briefly talk about is another role that I've taken up at the institution and being the advisor for a student group on campus called the Men of Color Alliance, or MOCA for short. And this topic in particular is very important to me because I realize that to best serve them, it's best for me to come up as my best self. So when we're talking about Black spaces, whether it be an employer, a company, or on campus, the space that we create translates to those that we serve. So it's not just about us, the professionals, it's about those that we work with and serve and try to support. So I'm talking about that is something I'm really interested in. And when I was asked to join this group, it was a no-brainer for me, but that's just a little bit about being what I do.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I can do that, yeah. Oh, last but not least.
There we go, yeah.
Good morning, everyone. How's it going?
Good morning.
Hello. My name is Davon Dixon. I'm the Associate Director of Internship Services at Lincoln University of Pennsylvania, not Nebraska. I run the entirety of the internship program. My role really is to kind of let the students know that they can be just as competitive as their PWI counterparts. Your degree matter, you matter. So that's kind of what I've been kind of doing and instilling in our students, is that you can be just as competitive and just as great. So I'm looking forward to speaking with you and to letting you know some great information here. So thank you for coming.
All right.
LU.
Okay.
All right, so yeah, I'm gonna kick it off. So since this is the Mo Whit show, I'm gonna kick it off, and I'm gonna ask the question of all of us: how often do you think about racial or ethnic identity at work and in your professional space?
I can kick it off.
Yeah.
Funny enough, Stanley and I were actually just talking about this yesterday because we went to Jake Small presentation yesterday and talked about, the question was posed, like, what would your ideal, wait, I have it in my notes, one sec. Yeah,
Yeah.
but
Ooh,
it
that's
was your
good.
ideal identity conscious world be.
Yeah,
And my response to that was where I don't have to be conscious about my identity.
yes,
So recognizing that I don't have the privilege to not think about how my identity shows up in every single space that I occupy, whether identity as like a taboo subject. And so for me, I think it's important for me to show, like, as I think about that, I show up as myself, our authentic self, when I show up to work, recognizing that this is in turn impacting my students who, like I said, if I'm at a minority serving institution, they need to see me show up as myself when I come up to work.
Mhm.
So whether that is getting these long braids that come all the way down here, whether that is getting these nails that's all long and whatever. But so that way it in turn shows that I can still be my authentic professional self, but while still maintaining my identity. And I don't feel like I need to, I always say like, if I feel like I need to minimize myself, that's not a space that I need to be in.
Yeah.
So that's typically how I think about it. I don't, since it's such a thing that comes up all the time for me, I try not to make it like it doesn't show up in workspaces at all, but also embrace it. And thinking through me embracing it in turn not only makes a better space for me and in my workspace, but also does that same for my students, so that way they can feel comfortable coming to me.
I have a follow-up to that. Do others bring up your racial identity in your workspace?
In the sense of, because my team is a very small office. So it's only like 3 of us, 2 of us full-time on the coaching side, like 1 part-time on the employer side, 1 full-time on the, so we're very small, tight-knit team. And so they ask not like to be the spokesperson for Black people, because I hate that, right? Don't do that. But in the sense of, okay, as we're reevaluating these resources, is the language that's used in this not feasible, but I'm not a morning person, else my brain isn't working, but is this more feasible for our students to be able to interpret this? So that's kind of like how that shows up. Or as we're thinking through, because right now we're trying to think through, do we want to create like a professional attire booklet or something like that? And as I'm talking about professionalism, and I tell them like, hey, make sure we don't say anything in there that's like,
how you wear your hair,
or
things like
saying
that.
like,
Wear them braids.
yeah,
Right,
don't wear that, or like,
Right.
because I'm going to ask you why not,
Exactly.
So
Yeah.
that's how that comes up, not in like the weird, creepy, like stereotypical way, but in the, okay, recognizing our student population and where we're located, I value your opinion and I want to hear it that kind of way.
Okay.
Because it's a fine line.
Absolutely.
So,
Yes. Yeah. Okay.
I can go next. In my current space, so I work at HBCU, it doesn't come up as much as it used to at a PWI.
Okay.
I think I can be more authentic in that space because I'm around individuals who look more like me than before. In reference to the students, I think my identity as a Black male is just that I have this presence because there's not a lot in higher ed. So you kind of act as a mentor, as though if I can do it, you can do it sort of situation. So trying to rebuild that on this campus has been, quite the pleasure. And my identity doesn't really come up. I work with a lot of employers, so they have a lot of, DEI initiatives. So that would be kind of that would be the only thing where my identity as a, person of color comes up, is that, we want more diversity. So how does that look like for me to tell the students, we have these pipelines, we have these are generated, they want you because of your skills, not just because you're Black or brown, right? So that's kind of the only space in which the identity is talked about more so.
Now, since you do work at an HBCU and that particular piece of your identity doesn't come up, what other identities do you carry come up in that workspace?
I think one thing that is like a real advantage, I think being young, I'm relatively into their age bracket, so I can relate to them. So I'm not, an old career professional who is out of touch, as though I'm going through what I went through, what you're going through, or and continuously going through what you're going through. So I relate to the struggles of the Gen Zs because I'm in that bracket with them.
Okay.
So it's easier to relate because I understand.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, that's good.
I guess I'll answer the question as well.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So I will say that race and ethnicity at Rutgers Newark does not come up. It doesn't come up because diversity, equity, and inclusion, and I hate to say it, but I'm gonna say it, is like embedded in the cloth, in the fabric of who we are at Rutgers Newark, right? And it's not forced. You know, there are some institutions that's like, this, we're about DEI, but it just came out of 2020 and that's what it is. You know, that's what it's about. But, you know, Rutgers Newark is one of, amongst others, but one of the most diverse institutions in the country. And, you know, I was afraid because I used to work at Lincoln in your role, you know, I used to be in that role. And, you know, that was like my dream role because I wanted to work at a HBCU. I wanted to build up a career center pretty much from the ground up and show Black and brown students the importance of, you know, career and professional development. That was the goal, but, you know, things ain't work. We're not going to get into that though. And I was like, okay, I'm going to go to Rutgers. I don't know how it's going to be. And then I went there and I was like, ooh, I don't have to, you know, put emphasis on the fact that I am Black or that I am a gender fluid individual or, you know, any other identity that I have. I don't have to put emphasis on it because they are so welcoming. They immediately was like, oh, your pronouns are they, she. Let's talk about it a little bit. Oh, okay, your family's from Jamaica. Let's talk about it a little bit. But they're not coming to me as that token because I'm not that token, you know, and I absolutely love that in that space. So it doesn't actually come up and I don't think about it like because I'm authentically me and I don't have to do too much to be authentically me. And that's very much appreciated in that space.
I would say for me, it's just something that I'm hyper aware of. I don't think it comes up per se. And I'm very fortunate, we're in my office now, my supervisor is a Black woman. So I do have a level of comfort and quick story. She was my career advisor back in college. So I've known her for a very long time. Yeah. So there's a level of comfort there from a racial ethnic identity perspective where I don't feel alone in that. But I will say it's something I'm hyper aware of in that when I walk into a space, I very oftentimes am one of one. You know, I'm a younger man, man of color. I'm Black. I'm biracial. So my mother's Puerto Rican, my dad's Black. So there's just a lot of aspects of my identity that I just don't see represented a lot. And something I've realized over time is that it could just be really isolating. I could be in a room full of people and still feel like I stick out. I'm just alone and kind of just in my own corner. So, you know, it's taken time to really embrace that and take pride in it. But it is something that I think should be acknowledged as well, that it can be very isolating because it just happens so often.
Yeah, I think that this out from the audience, but I remember
Mic.
your supervisor.
Use your mic.
I need to stand up, but I remember your
Use the
supervisor.
mic.
What mic? Oh, that's okay. This mic.
They're not gonna hear him.
This one right here.
Just
Okay.
talk loud.
Yeah.
I'm talking loud. All right. No, I was just jumping on to that about isolation. Is I think your supervisor connected us together. Or
Okay.
something like that. And I seen that, like, she was like,
Yeah.
I don't know, like, I'm tracking now, but
Yes.
I remember that feeling.
There
She
was,
like,
yeah.
She was like, one of my young employees is going to conference.
Yes.
Please connect with him.
Yeah.
And so that overt outreach, you know, mentorship,
Mm-hmm.
but also
Yeah.
was like, that's that feeling of like ahead of time. I think about that hypervigilance is that I'm like, who in the room? Who there?
Yeah.
Who already
Yeah.
there?
Uh-huh. Exactly.
And looking at it and you go in the rooms. And so I think that that's something where it's like, I work at George Mason. Yes, I think we are one of the most diverse institutions in the state of Virginia due to its proximity to DC. But also I'm still the only Black male staff, right? Diverse student body, does that represent diverse employee
Right.
body, whatever? And so understanding that, and I love what you said, Brianna, like someone said it, the pour in the students, you got to pour in yourself. But it's hard when you're feeling lonely,
Mhm.
and then you're telling the student, go to a job, you're going to enter a space and get money, but at the same time, you're like, well, I hope I can prepare them. So I have conversations with young Black males about entering spaces and say, look at this, before you look at a job or resume, look at the organization you're applying to, read that room too, because I'm an old head now. Shoot, I got the grades coming in. And so I'm thinking like that. And so I just wanted to share that story that your mentor reached out because of that thing of like hypervigilance.
Yes.
Like, I'm also going to look out for other people and say, hey, I'm going to introduce people before they get there.
Yes,
but I think something you spoke to, Phil, also speaks to allyship too. My director, who is a white identifying woman, would, for me, reach out to other individuals in other spaces and say, hey, I have this staff member who is a Black female and needs support in this area. And I think you would be a great person to serve her well. Do you think I could make that connection for you? And she would gladly step in as that intermediary to say, hey, this would be a great person for you to connect with because they could offer you this. And so I appreciate allies doing that for me. And my director would do that in a heartbeat and say, let me make that connection for you. Let me step in on your behalf because I recognize your talent and I recognize what your needs are and what spaces you can go to and elevate to. But then I also understand where everyone else is too. And I might have a different viewpoint and perspective that you may not have. So how can others see what the need is, see where others might be able to support, and not just kind of sitting idly by or asking, how can I help you? What do you need? Well, sometimes I don't know what I need, and you might see or hear or know someone that they can help or fill in a gap based off of a need, an unspoken need. So I just wanted to point that out, but yeah.
I'm gonna jump into this next question because it kind of aligns just a little bit. How do you navigate working with leadership in spaces where you don't see yourself or that lacks representation?
I'm gonna take that one because I often find myself in that space, and on two fronts. One, where I'm walking into spaces where it could be everyone looks like me, but they all have the PhDs and I don't. And I'm sitting there thinking I have either imposter syndrome and I'm like, I don't belong in this space because I don't have all of the degrees or all of the letters behind my name. But then I say something that kind of breaks their whole brain and mindset. And they're like, we didn't think about that. And I'm sitting there going, you all went to school for this stuff. What do you mean? This is not rocket science. This is stuff that you all studied and should have the theories and all of the knowledge on. But then, so when I'm in that space, I'm like, okay, this is why I'm here. But then there are other spaces where I don't see myself at all. And I walk in and I'm like, there's a reason I need to be in here because I'm not seen in this space and my voice matters. And as an introvert, I know a lot of people don't think that I am. I do struggle with walking into spaces, period, because for me, it's like, okay, you have to use your voice. You have to elevate in spaces that others may not have a voice. And how can you do that? What ways can you speak on behalf of others? And how can you step in and fill the gaps? And so that is one thing that I've made it for me, my mission, because there are times where growing up, I didn't have someone to do that for me. And sometimes like I said earlier, I didn't know how to articulate what I needed, even in college. So I went to a PWI and there were 10 of us, legit 10 of us at the institution. And so it was like, okay, who's here to help us? And there were 3 staff members and faculty of color, and that was like all colors and ethnicities. And so it was like, who am I going to go to? Who's going to be my support? Who's going to advocate for me? And so that's where I had to learn what my voice was and learn how to advocate for myself and also lean on others because there was no one going to step in for me.
And just to piggyback, because we had the discussion earlier this morning, it's walking into that space where you do have individuals who do look like you in leadership and they don't get it. And it's hard because you want to be the voice, but also you don't want to overstep, right? Because there is a hierarchy, we can't, avoid that. So you want to be respectful, but you want to say, this doesn't work, and it hasn't worked. You've been in your profession for 25 years, but times have changed. We've been through so much. So how do we kind of redirect them in the positive light? But then I've been in spaces where you're right, no one does look at me at all. So then you're like, do I warrant the ability to speak in this space, right? Is this okay for me to speak in this space? Now, how would they receive it as like, oh, this young black man telling me what I don't already know, right? Situation. But I think in most of the spaces I've been in with senior leadership that they don't look like me, they are pretty receptive. I think they're trying to understand, we don't know everything. So we need someone who does know a little bit more than what we do. They hire you because you have this subset of perspectives that they don't. So,
I think another point that I want to touch on that Mo touched on was speaking for people that may not have a voice represented. I do think there's an added pressure when you're in these spaces. I think everyone up here and people in the audience might be familiar with this, but that familiarity of being told you have to be twice as good to be successful. So I think there's that added pressure on not just having to be twice as good, but also maybe speaking for people that aren't represented or don't have a voice there, and knowing that you're not just representing yourself. So there's also that added pressure onto it as well. And I think that's where mentorship comes into play, because it's great to have that validation that you do belong in these spaces, that you are good enough, you are skilled, you do have things to offer, and that's why you're in these spaces. You didn't just trip and fall and get into these spaces.
Right.
You belong there, and you are there because you deserve to be there. So that's self-worth as well, but that also comes from mentorship and that reassurance that we're doing good work and that we are there because we need to be there. But I also feel like it's just, I'm here potentially opening a door for somebody else in the future that may want to follow a similar path. So I want to make sure I represent in that way.
And I have an answer, but I just got so caught up in your response. I want to make sure I'm answering it actually correctly. The question again.
How do you navigate working with leadership in spaces where you don't, see?
Right. I don't have like a magic wand for it because I think it's more so also like I think my personality plays a big piece in it. I walk into the room and I'm walking into a room very person. And not in a sense of, because it's a very contradictory thing because I'm also very introverted. So like, it's the thing when I'm a very, like when I'm here, you're going to know that I'm here and you're going to hear my voice whether you like it or not. And it's also been shown in different, I want it to be known so that way before you even invite me to this meeting, if you don't want to hear what I got to say, don't invite me. So that way I save my hour, you save your hour, whatever. But it's been making its ways around campus in a way, like for example, my not in a bad way, but
Not in a bad way.
I mean, but if it is, my supervisor and I had a meeting one day, not just like our regular like check-in. And she was like, I had a meeting with someone, whatever, and she was like, they were talking about like the structure, like I said, we're a small team, so just talking about like the structure of our team, and she was like, I think you got a good like number 2 over there, Brianna. Like she's gonna come in here, she's very vocal, and I was like, I don't know what you mean by that, but I am. So it's just one of those things where I just show up. Like I don't try to let the titles of leadership take me out of that space before I get there.
Yeah.
Recognizing you're a person just like I am, and
Yes,
we're
absolutely.
occupying these same spaces. So I'm not going to say anything to be disrespectful towards you, and I'm going to recognize the title that you have and the space that you occupy and the roles that you have, but I'm not going to let that hinder me from doing what I need to do.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I think having that kind of mentality, and that's, like I said, that's just my personality anyway. That kind of plays in my favor. It hurts me sometimes, but I mean, that's how the cookie crumbles. But it's just one of those things where I won't let you. It's also me psyching myself out to not be a victim of that imposter syndrome. To Mo's point, like I don't have the doctorate. I don't want it. It's like I don't want it. I'm not even about to put myself through that. But you know, but recognizing, okay, yes, I feel like a master's level professional, even if I wasn't, you know, recognizing that I do have something valuable to add to this space. So if I'm here, I'm not just going to be a fly on the wall. You're going to hear me buzzing. And I want to make sure.
I like that.
Bar.
That was a whole bar.
Okay. You gonna hear me buzzing.
I'm not a fly on the wall, but you're going to hear me buzzing. I'm writing it down.
Tattoo on my shoulder.
I'm gonna just talk on that. I'm gonna just talk on
Right?
it.
And you're done.
I wanted to follow up, but
I
I don't know. I'm gonna give my answer, but still.
No, write that down because I don't. That just came out. I'm not gonna remember that.
Can you sign my notepad?
Somebody get that.
Bars. I absolutely love that. I love that. I can't follow up to it.
Got it written.
Yes, right.
It's written down.
We're gonna get it on a t-shirt and everything. So who here watches Friends or has watched Friends? Okay. I like Friends. I know there's an issue. I know there's an issue, okay? But I like
Talking about
Friends.
the one friend that came on that was
Anyway.
okay.
Anyway, I'm not getting into that. As a New Yorker, I'm not gonna get into that. All right. But no, I like to say that I'm Chandler, right? Because I will make jokes when I feel uncomfortable, just so that I can become comfortable, and it's really weird. But I also like to make people feel a little uncomfortable, which, you know, it kind of stirs the pot, but I don't care. So when I'm in spaces where I'm with people that don't look like me, I'll start on that side. I will say something, I will address something that I know is gonna stir the pot on purpose, throw a joke in there, and then be like, all right, so let's talk about it, you know? Let's talk about why the leadership team looks nothing like me or our student population. Like, let's talk about that. Let's talk about why you are developing programming for people that look like me, but you don't look like me and know nothing about the experience and didn't even bother consulting with me. You know, like I will ask questions like that, and I'll do it in a very professional way. Professional petty way, but I'll do it in a very professional way because I still want to be heard and I don't want to be disrespectful, but I want you to know that I feel disrespected in some way, shape, or form. Okay, so that's to leadership that doesn't look like me. To leadership that does look like me, girl, gather the quotes. Yeah, for leadership that does look like me, I said this earlier when we were preparing. I was like, you know, not all skin folk are kinfolk, right? And you need to know how to address these individuals so that they know, baby, we are the same color and you are not above me. We're on the same level. And I don't care if you have all the letters behind your name. I don't care. You know, we are working towards the same goal. You know, student success. If we're in a professional workspace, student success, we're working towards student success. So you are not going to belittle me in this space because you have PhD or EDD at the end of your name, okay? And if you really want to get into it, I'm working on it too, boo. Like, okay, Westchester University, shine. You know what I'm saying? Okay, I'm sorry. But yeah, like I do not like when people try and make me feel small.
Yeah.
Right. And it's common. I used to, as a child, I would put myself I would make myself small. I make myself small. If you're West Indian, you've heard that before. Like, make yourself small. Small up yourself. All right, okay. You know, children should be seen and not heard. And I grew up with that mentality. And when I'm in certain spaces, I tend to go back to it. Trauma. I tend to go back to it. But then I realize, like, my voice is important. My identity is important. Who I am is important. And I should not small up myself for anybody.
Yeah.
I should speak on what's bothering me, speak on things that are, you know, positive, negatives, whatever it is, I'm gonna speak on it, regardless of who the leadership is and what they look like.
Yeah.
Period.
Something you mentioned just brought to mind that skin folk and kin folk. Now, so I had an experience where I went into an interview for an HBCU, and I was like, I'm excited. This is my first time going and working with an HBCU. Went into the interview, real hyped, real excited. And one of the questions they asked was, how do you think you can relate to our students? They looked at my resume. I went to a PWI and I had previously worked at a PWI. And it took me aback because I didn't think I had changed overnight. And I was like, did something,
What you mean?
did something change about me? And I had to ask that question. I said, did something change about me? And they were like, what do you mean? I was like, did I suddenly change from being a Black woman to something else? And they were like, no. And I said, so what makes you think I can't relate to the student body here as a Black woman? And they were like, well, you went to a PWI, you worked at a PWI. How do you think you can relate to our students? And I said, I'm a Black woman. I was like, one, let's start there. I was like, working at these institutions and going to these institutions does not mean that my identity changes in any regard. But that also meant for me, that was not the space for me to be in, because they would not see me and my identity as belonging there.
Yeah.
And so I would go into that space constantly combating and fighting to fit in to a space that I felt like I should naturally fit into, right? And so even with my own identity that I carry, I would still struggle with fitting into a space that I felt like I should naturally fit into. And so that is something that even in national news, we've seen happen. We saw the vice president, unfortunately, unalive herself because she was not supported in her institution where majority of the individuals looked like her. She was bullied in that space. And when you think about the support, when you think about where you're working and who you're working with, who are your allies? Who is your support system? Who are the people that you can rely on? And that goes outside of just your racial identity. That speaks to the core of who you are. I always tell my students, find your starting five. Who are the 5 people that you can call out to in a moment's notice and say, do you have 8 minutes? Because that's all you really need to debrief and get what you need off your chest and get some space. And I may not need advice. I may not need any other things, but I need 8 minutes to just be and be my whole self with you. Do you have 8 minutes? And if I can go through those starting 5, I may not get a response, but I know within 5 to 10 minutes, somebody's going to call me back. I've got a starting 5 at work. I've got a starting 5 in my personal life and in my spiritual life. So really, I got like 15, all right? But I know who I can call on. And within 5 to 10 minutes, those people are going to call me. Someone's going to call me back and be like, what do you need? And for 8 minutes, I can just say, I just need to vent. Or I just need you to sit on the phone with me while I cry or while I breathe. Or I need you to snap me back into reality. I always tell my students that, because sometimes you go into these spaces where you think, I should belong here. I should feel comfortable being my whole self here, or being the self that I want to present in this space, but I don't. And then you question, who are you? Who am I? What am I doing? And these are the people that can say, you are who you are, and I know who you are. They know the core of you, and they can snap you back into it.
Can I just really quick say, I appreciate you. Was it last year was your first conference? So last year was Mo's first conference, right? And I immediately after put you in my starting 5. Immediately after. So that's a real thing, y'all. Like, Phil has been in my starting 5. But like immediately.
Yeah, I remember same thing. This whole thing. Yo, so I remember, why am I standing up? I gotta sit myself. So I remember, once again, Samara, her supervisor is my mentor. And specifically in spaces, she said, Mo is coming. Please look out for Mo. Connect with Mo.
Yeah.
And then I was there and I said, Mo, I know someone that we need to link you up with. And we actually recorded an episode. We had a podcast there at Eastern EACE. But I'm saying that the same thing is energy is that when you see people in that energy, it is very appreciated and it's needed. Like, there's times where I'm like, I don't know if I want to go to work today. But then I'm like, but I know I got a colleague that I could just have at work.
Work bestie.
Yeah, or group text. If you got the group text is popping. I don't know.
Really good.
How many people at work have someone at work where you send them a text and then you look at them to see if they read it in the same way?
Snickering in the back.
But
Yeah.
you need that, right?
See, I'm the person that don't look at me.
I'll be doing that jump just to see their reaction. Like, did you can believe that they said this toxic thing? And you look at them to see it, and then you laugh because it's the only it's like an energy thing. But I was going to say this too. One thing that's been really important that I've told students and I tell myself is that if there's not a space for you, create your own space.
Absolutely.
I don't need an affinity group. I like to participate, but at the same time, like when I was working at Mason, I was like, I'm lonely. So I created a Black male faculty and staff group because all I did is walk around and say, you Black male, you want to be my group? And I just started adding people to a listserv. And that listserv turned into a real thing. But it's like, there's an innate sense that the need for belonging does not go away as you get older.
Yes.
And the need, everyone is the lunch table, right? We all wanted, since preschool on, we always wanted to have a space where we could sit at that table and hang out
Fit
with
in.
friends
Yes.
and belong. And it doesn't go away. And I think about this overemphasis on student groups.
Yep.
I was like, what about grown-up groups?
Yeah,
Like,
exactly. Right.
That doesn't go away.
Yeah.
Like just imagine you get a job and you don't want to speak, like you don't want a group for y'all. And so I really think about institutions of how they pour into affinity groups,
Yeah.
and they should pour into those spaces at institutions
Yeah.
just as much as they pour into student groups, because the innate sense for belonging does not go away when you grow up.
Yeah.
I think it also exacerbates as you go up, right?
Yeah.
Loneliness, as you said, it goes up. That's a real sense. And talking about when you're lonely, how does that affect your work?
Absolutely.
How are you going to thrive when you're
Exactly.
not feeling good,
Right.
right? So
Yeah.
just think about that, in your sense.
And identity
my top five.
plays a huge part into that. So when you're in a space where you often don't see yourself, it can be very isolating. It can be very lonely. So how do you create those spaces? Like when you're one of one.
But it's also like for me, my issue comes into why is it always on us to create this spaces? You know what I'm saying? So it's like,
It's
why
not.
is it always on me to have, and so that's where I don't know if you've heard the term like Black tax.
Yes.
You know what I mean? So like, as I talk about being this representation for like the Black women students on my campus, that is also very taxing.
Yeah.
Because now I got all these kids that I don't have kids, right? And it's like, okay, well now I got to spend this, and I have to, right? But innately you kind of like, if you feel it, right? And it's like, because we're all in helping professions, so it's in our personalities to be like, oh, like I had a student, I knew it was her first day starting at her internship, and we had a conversation, and I'll talk about this later in my own presentation later, but
Go to that.
as we talk about Black spaces, redefining professionalism, but and she booked an appointment with me, and we've been talking anyway, so I already knew who she was, but she booked the appointment with me. It's like, hey, Brown, I got this question because it's my first internship. I don't even know what to do with my hair. Like, she's like, I just did this big chop. What do I do? Is it okay if I show up with a wig? I'm like, girl, I'll show up with I might come up with a wig one day and braid the next. I don't know.
Right.
But also thinking through the space, like I said, out of our team, I was the only one that she felt she could come to ask that question.
Yeah.
And thinking how that's the space. And so I feel like as we talk about actually being allies and actually just instead of just talking it, like do what you can do to show up in these spaces so that way it's not all on whoever the minoritized group is. Like it could be Black people, it could be people from LGBTQIA groups, it could, anything. It could be people with disabilities. Like thinking through that lens so that way, because we're always thinking through that lens. So like as an ally, think through that lens so that way the work is not all on the marginalized group.
Yeah.
So that's how it's just those different,
Yes.
Yes.
Can I piggyback off that?
Yeah.
I think a distinction, and I've always thought about this, is like allyship,
Yeah.
right? I feel like there's two avenues. It's either, are you tolerating or are you supporting, right?
Yeah.
Do you support me in this space because you share the same values I do and that you care about my work? Or are you tolerating me because I was hired and you're in my proximity and you have to work with me? And I feel like that's something you don't want to think about it, but it's truly there. It's like, are you interacting because you have to, right?
Yeah.
Or because you actually want to.
Right.
And I think that's how we walk in these spaces with our allies. Like, I want you to support me. I don't want you to tolerate me.
Yeah.
Right. I want you to be in that group where we work together for that common goal, and not just because we have to meet this quota.
Yeah.
Right. Students are, they're consumers, but they're also people. Right.
Right.
We forget that aspect. They're not a dollar sign. They're going to leave our institution and represent us wherever they go. Even if you leave, you left a mark.
Absolutely.
Somewhere. So that's something that you have to look into, I think, all the time.
Yeah. And I think as allies, I feel like we have to lead with a person-centered mindset.
Yes.
Yeah.
And lead with a how do they want to be treated versus how do I want to treat them. So if you want to be treated a certain kind of way, and I talked to someone about this last night, about the fact if you want to be known as a block and I see you as a tree, but you want to be identified as a block, you're a block. I'm not going to question it. You're a block to me because that is what you want. It's not up to me to decide that. That is you to decide what you want to be. And how can I support you in your blockism? Right? Whatever it is. So how can I support you? How can I show up for you? And how can I be the best leader for you? And how can I create a space that is going to be welcoming for you? What do you need? And if you don't know what you need, then it's up to me to figure that out, to go out and research, to do my own work, because I don't know what I don't know, but I'm not going to require you to teach me. And I think that's some of the big issue that for me as a Black person, I've had with others thinking that I have to educate them on what being Black is, or my history, or all of the things. I shouldn't have to educate you on those things. You don't know what Juneteenth is? Google it. Like there's I grew up in the Encyclopedia Britannica era where I could go and check that out, or I had a whole set because the salesperson came to the door and sold my mama on it, and we had the whole kit, so I got it. And that's what I did every summer because I was an only child and I read those things. Right. So I have random bits of information in my mind. But I also I'm one of those that if I don't know something, I'm gonna go and look at it. I'm gonna go research it because I want to know more of how I can support that person or another person in their walk and in their journey versus in them requiring them to teach me.
One thing I just want to add on to that too. When it comes to allyship, I think that's great, like, research and all that stuff, but true allyship really comes from exposing yourself to these spaces. I think Brianna was getting to that as well. Like, you have to be in the spaces of the people you want to support.
Yes.
And it's not just based off, I spoke to this one Black employee or one Latino employee, and they said this was a problem, so now we have to do this. The true allyship is being in those spaces, educating yourself, and listening a lot more than you speak. And when you speak, you should be asking questions to clarify rather than imparting your opinions that, most cases no one really asked for. Just really want to throw that out there as well. It's like, so really exposing yourself and being in those spaces and understanding what the general culture is and what the main issues are, and then working together with those people to create the change that everyone's looking for, as opposed to, imparting your presence in that situation.
Yeah.
Just want to let me know we got 10 minutes.
I was just about to say, we running up on time, y'all.
Let me ask us questions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So, Phil, I'm gonna ask if you can go around. If there are any questions, Phil will run to you. He'll pull a Joe.
And remember, if you do not want your voice recorded, just let Phil know before he just hands the mic and puts it in your face. Because we are live recording this.
Also, introduce yourself, please,
Mhm.
just so we know who's in the room. Yeah, you don't have to say your full name though, just in case you don't have to.
Whitsec.
Too many rules. Too many rules.
So my name is Joes, and my title and everything, or just my name? Is it all good? Okay, so my question is around action items for folks, right, that want to create those spaces. And so when I think about the norms of the workplace, right, how can folks that are either allies, right, or the only member representation or not help to create those spaces where everyone does feel safe to be themselves? That's part one. I have a part two to that too, so I'll just ask it right now. If there's time. But I think that as you get into your career and you build on your skill set, you create that sense of value that you know you have. And, you know, the imposter syndrome kind of goes down a little bit. So how can people continue to create that opportunity to have that validation happen? So allies validating, you know, the work that you do, but how do you build up that confidence so that you can go and say, it doesn't matter who's in the room. I already know what value I bring and why you need me here, right? So how do you strategically ensure that you're needed in those spaces so that you can be comfortable to create them? So those are the two questions.
I had an answer and then you just went off. Dang. Okay, so first I'll say my answer to the first part
And I'll take the second one.
Yeah.
Okay.
So building those spaces, right? As an ally. For me, it's genuine collaboration. Don't just, you know, hear, and I think this was mentioned already, like, don't just hear, oh, this person of color does not like, or matter of fact, this Black person, straight up, this Black person does not like this, let me make this change for them and not consult with them. And it's like, you go off the rails and you do something because you know, watched one episode of some Black show and you think you know something. Like, consult with the individuals and, you know, ask questions of what they need. Don't make the assumption that they need something, right? Ask what they need. Ask how you can help. If you need my help, do you need my help to create this space? What do you need? What's the support? What are the resources that you need? And do you want me to do it? That I need somebody to just collaborate with me. That's it. If you just see like, oh, there is, I know that there's something going on. I'll use Kwanzaa. Kwanzaa's happening. I'm going to use Kwanzaa for now. Kwanzaa's happening. I know, I did my Google search on what Kwanzaa was. So I'm going to do a Kwanzaa celebration here at this institution. And there's only 5 Black folk, and I didn't ask any questions. How do you know that they even celebrate or even care for Kwanzaa? How do you know? You're just making that assumption because it's Black, right? No, consult with me. Consult with me. Ask me questions first. Don't make any assumptions. Here, take this from. Oh no, you got your own.
I got my own mic. I would say, so you said ask questions. I would say once you ask those questions, I'm gonna also add to yours. Once you ask those questions, don't just into the answer and then do your own thing. Really hear the answer, hear the advice that we're providing you as an ally, and take that and implement the changes or the advice we're providing, because we're not just saying it just to say it. There's truth to it. There's honesty and earnestness to it. It's because we're trying to save you from looking like idiots. I'm just going to be completely frank and honest. Like, we're trying to save you from looking like idiots. And then also don't put my name on it. If afterwards, like, you do something and you look like a whole idiot doing it. Don't then say, oh, I collaborated with this person and did a great thing. No, don't put my name on that, because that's not what happened. We're not doing that.
No,
So-
why am I in it?
Right. Why am I in it? You asked me one question, and I gave you advice, but you didn't take any of that advice. Okay. Right. Your second part to the question was, as you get into your career, how do you build it up, knowing, as you walk into these spaces with imposter syndrome, things like that. One, there's two things that you can have. There's mentorship and sponsorship.
Yeah.
I would say get both.
Mm-hmm.
Get a sponsor and get a mentor.
Yep.
Multiple.
Yep.
Sponsors set you up in those spaces.
Mm-hmm.
Sponsors are going to pull you into the spaces, the top spaces that you're not in already.
Mm-hmm.
And that's for any identity that you're in.
Yep.
They're going to pull you into those spaces that you may not know about, that you may not be aware of. They're going to say, hey, you know what? You all are talking about this. I know someone who needs to be in this room. And it may not be your direct supervisor, director, or anyone within necessarily your space, but that you've connected with, right? A mentor is going to be the one that's going to give you that career guidance, that career leadership, that career advice to say, I'm struggling with this career-wise. I'm struggling with imposter syndrome. I'm struggling with, what do I do next in my career navigation? What, can you give me advice based off of your own experience? That's what they're going to help you with, coaching you in that realm. But a sponsor is going to set you up with, I'm already in this space. I'm already leading in this space, and I know some of the top people. Let me pull you in.
Just to add to that, I would say a good bulk of it is also internal as well.
Yeah.
Recognizing that, you can have all the sponsors and this, that, and the other, but sometimes you got to see it in yourself before somebody else sees it in you. So for me, what I do with that, I have literally written a full-blown list of everything that I have done in any type of thing.
Yes.
And sometimes if you just keep it all up here, you don't remember every single thing that you've ever done.
Mm-hmm.
And so just seeing it all, I wrote it down, especially I was doing my year-end evaluation or whatever. I know you ain't asked for all this, but I'm gonna give you all of this anyway. And so that way you really visualize it and you see damn, I did all this.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't I walk into this room confident?
Right.
And so just seeing that value added out, that's just for anybody, right? Just seeing that value added out. So that way you can't tell me anything about me that I don't already know about myself. Because I just wrote it all out by myself.
Yeah.
So it's just all about that shifting of the brain. I said, essentially you're battling. I can't let the imposter syndrome win. If I just sat there and wrote everything out and it's all laid out, I just told myself, whatever, so just working on that internal stuff too.
Yeah. I have affirmations in my notes. So yesterday before I spoke, I was in my room, in my bathroom, reading my affirmations with music playing in the background, hyping myself up. I don't know if some of y'all saw me on the stage. I was yes, psyching myself up because imposter syndrome was setting in, and it was what are you doing? Why are you on this stage? And I had to say, no, you're going to do this. You've got this. Repeating your affirmations. You know them. Once you know them by heart, you just say them, and it quiets that voice. At least for me, it does. And I have to have that voice louder than the other.
Does anybody else have a question? You got 3 minutes left.
I'll make a point. And I'll just respond, Elvis Santos from Wagner College. I appreciate you all being here. Monique, I appreciate you saying having mentors and sponsors, because for me, I have my own board of champions, as I call them, right? For me, I have my mentors, my sponsors, my advisors. But I've been in higher education for about 6 years now. And I remember the first 2 years, I was afraid. Because I didn't value myself, and I thought I wasn't good enough to be in higher education. And then now, years into my profession as a Latino professional, I know my value, and I found that kind of aha moment to know that, you know what, I matter. I value myself. So my question to you is, when did you guys find out your aha moment in terms of, that I matter in this space because I have the criteria, the qualifications, the skill set. I matter being in this meeting with all these leaders.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for the question. So For a little background on me, I actually worked in higher education I think I've been in higher education about 7 years now, but I used to work in college athletics, focusing in marketing. And I had some success with that and it was going well, but I just felt like in my heart, it wasn't for me. Like I felt like my heart was pushing me in another direction. And kind of going back earlier when I mentioned my supervisor, she was the first informational interview I did about career advising, because I noticed that, especially with my identity, a lot of students of color would come to me. I'd help with resumes, personal statements, things like that. I'm like, there might be something here. And as I started to really go down that rabbit hole, I had more opportunities. I remember I was on an interview, and on the interview for a position, the person said at the end, "Well, you sound very passionate about this." And I don't think I ever heard that in my previous career. So for me, the light bulb went off. I'm like, okay, like it's resonating with people. And I, at that point, haven't even started doing it yet. So for me, that's when I really had that moment and like, okay, I'm going down the right path, like chase this, go after it hard because there's something there. And that's led me to where I am today. And I'm still chasing it because I still feel like there's more there. So I think that's where I really had that first aha moment of like, okay, I'm going down the right path and I have the skills to succeed in this area.
And just to piggyback, I think for me was when I got my first unprompted student email telling me, I'm glad you're here. I'm glad that you support me. And I'm glad that you have helped me where I am. And I was like, I think I'm doing the right thing.
Yeah.
And then after that, I told myself, I'm gonna get any job I want. And I have.
Yeah.
So I think you have that moment is when, for me, it's unprompted. Like I didn't ask the student to email me back. Like I was just doing what I was doing. That's my job. Right. And to come back and say, thank you is something that is not common anymore. And especially from the younger generation to thank you for something that that's what I come to work every day for to do. And after that, I was just like, oh, I'm gonna go up.
Yeah.
So
Go.
It was actually pretty recent. For those of you that don't know, this past year is when a year ago, June 5th, is when I started working at Rutgers Newark, right? Within that year, a whole lot of stuff went down. I was diagnosed with lupus and rheumatoid arthritis. I was in a relationship that broke off after 13 years. I was struggling. I got diagnosed with ADHD, all this stuff. And I was just like, I felt like a failure because it was pouring into work. And it made me like not want to work. It made me like really depressed. And I'm like, this is terrible. But my supervisor, Toy Tyson, if you know who Toy Tyson is, she's absolutely amazing. She would constantly say, you are doing a phenomenal job. You came into this role and immediately started doing benchmark things so that we can get our name changed. You took over marketing so that it could get updated. You were working with the peers. You grew, you made your team confident, all this stuff. You are doing such a phenomenal job. So yeah, keep going. And I could hear her voice and I wish I could speak like her, but I can't. But like in my mind, it translated to keep going, sis, you're doing the damn thing. And it made me feel so good. It made me feel so good about myself. And I finally was like, okay, I made it. Even though I've been in a leadership role before, I made it because I have this one woman that I look up to, telling me like, you're doing a phenomenal job and keep going. So yeah, that's when it hit me upside the head.
And just one statement that made me realize it was my aha moment. Where I realized I'm not the problem. So I have this saying to myself, like, is you know what I mean? Like, am I the problem? Is it me? And I realized I'm not the problem. But I say that in the sense of when I had my first higher ed job, it was as we talk about Black spaces, it was not a space for me. It was not a space for me to be productive. It was not a space for my personality. It was not a space for me as a Black woman. And so that in turn made me start thinking, and this is also the stage where like it was my first higher ed job. I was bouncing back and forth, figuring out I was fresh grad. I'm figuring out what am I supposed to be doing. So it was like, is this for me? Is it? And then I switched to another role after 2 years, and like it was just like a sunshine. And so like I just did like one thing and it was like, wow, that was the best idea I've ever heard. I was like, really? For real? That I got more, and so just recognizing, like once I realized that I wasn't the problem in that first, because that first one can really hit you. It can really
Mhm.
make or break you. And so once I realized it wasn't me, it was the space,
Yes.
then I was able to grow from there, because I felt, as we talk about, all of us had that common theme of
Right.
being poured into.
It
So
wasn't
once
the
I
seed,
got
it was
into
the
that
soil.
space of where I'm being poured into, that's where I had that aha.
What you
Yeah.
say?
I said it
She
wasn't
said a
the
word.
seed, it was the soil. So
Oh.
you're the seed. It's not necessarily you, it's the soil, the environment that you're in that could be toxic. So
Her.
sorry. That's how we're gonna end this.
Thank you all so much for
Thank you,
joining
guys.
us. Thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed the conversation.
Yeah.
We'll be up here if you do want to ask any other questions.